What's up guys, it's Kyle with Laser Everything, and today we have a project within a project to make a bigger project from A to Z. So if you're excited about projects with your fiber laser or your CO2 laser, hang in there because we're getting started right now. So first things first, with this being a multi-step project, we should talk about what the projects are. We're going to be making some slate coasters, or rather we're going to be engraving them because I don't know how to make slate, but we know how to engrave slate. So I'm going to be engraving some batches of slate as Christmas gifts. And part of that is I want a display box that I can both package them in, as well as you can remove the top and use it as a display piece. So you can just pull out as many as you need, put them back, and they're all self-contained. And I want to do that out of some wood. So we're going to be doing the slate on our fiber, and we're going to be doing the boxes on our CO2. We're going to go through the process for both. First things first, we're going to do the slate, and then we'll come back and talk about how we want to package it up. We will be doing this on the 50-watt Raycus laser from CloudRay. So we're going to move forward and get started right now. All right, we're here in Lightburn, and two things I'm going to speed through really quick. This is a Raycus machine, a 50-watt Raycus. And this particular model has a 50 to 100 kilohertz frequency range. So it is going to function a little bit differently than what we're used to on the JPT machines we've been using. So that said, I am fine-tuning things just a little bit on slate for this, and we do have 3 levels of color that we can do on slate as of yet, or at least I have as of yet. I have white, medium gray, and dark gray. I'm not totally convinced on my dark gray, which is fine because we only need 2 colors for the designs we'll be doing. So for white, I'm just gonna run through them really quick. 750 speed, 50 frequency, 80 power, bidirectional fill with a 0.025 line interval, and you can optionally use flood fill. Your results may vary based on quality, so you may have to determine whether or not that's worthwhile using for you or not. It may save you some time depending on your design. And for medium gray, we'll be rocking 1500 speed, 50 frequency, 90 power, 0.05 line interval, and a bidirectional fill. And again, flood fill optional based on your quality needs. This is with a 200 millimeter work area lens, not F value. So this is an F290 200 millimeter work area lens. That said, now that we got that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and speed through setup. Now, this is the first time we've really used the rotary on this laser, and I did want to go ahead and batch out these slates since we're going to be doing 16 of them. And I wanted to work on other things while these were running. So that's a perfect opportunity to work with the rotary. So with it being the first setup, we need to make sure that our steps per rotation are all set. And just from working with other people and helping them get set up, I know a common number for a lot of lasers actually, not just CloudRay, 12,800 steps per rotation is pretty common. Now, the beautiful part about Lightburn is you have this test button. And when you hit test, you can see if you get a full rotation. It should go all the way around back to the starting point and then rotate back around to the starting point and stop. And that tells you that you have a full rotation. If it's stopping short of that full 360-degree rotation, that tells me that it's not the right steps per rotation. If it's going too far, you need to adjust it. So now that we have that all set up, we know that our steps per rotation is 12,800. Now we're going to jump into the actual tool that we're going to be using, the repeat marking tool. Now, we've covered this in another video, so if you want to know more about this in the settings here, check out that dedicated video for it, but we're going to go ahead and get this set up and get moving. I know I blew through the settings really quickly here, but just to make it a little bit easier, I will upload these to the community fiber parameter library so that everyone can see and have access to these, and I'm happy to share. I'll also provide a link to that in the description below. so we're back from engraving our slate. And just in case our little time-lapse camera didn't get a good look at those, just wanted to show those off. That's number 1. This is number 2. That's number 3. And that's number 4. Now, the beautiful part about this is you can do this with any design you want. I used these designs off of a design bundle that I purchased last year. I will share a link to that in the description below. It actually came as a very big pack. It was one of their Christmas package bundles that ended up coming up with like $100 worth of stuff or something like that, and it was on sale. So in any event, I will link that below, but there was a lot more than that. So you can pick whatever you want. And the benefit to this is I did 4 different designs for a reason. I want to package them as an individual unit. So that way there's some variety in each of the gifts that I'm giving. You could do one design and do multiple of them. You could do a family design, a monogram, or whatever you want. So the design aspect of this isn't really what we're focusing on, at least for me. Another factor is I want to fit 4 in a package. So again, I did 4 different designs because I want to do 4 in a package, and now we just need to make the box. So let's get started with that. All right, so we're diving right in on the box here. Now, there's a couple factors I want to go over before we get into the software. So I have a measurement implement, a micrometer here, and I'm just going to take one of my slate coasters and we're going to measure it. Now, if you didn't know, they're usually about 100 millimeters square. They will vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. They're a natural material. Like wood, there's imperfections, there's little gnarly bits sometimes, and yep, these are exactly 100. So at least for me, the biggest one of my batch is exactly 100 millimeters. They're going to vary up and down a little bit, but we want to build in some tolerance because we know they're not going to be perfect. Some are going to be a little smaller, some are going to be a little bigger. So I want to take into account that I'm going to make these maybe 2 or 3 millimeters larger than they need to be. Not enough where they're going to really be getting some inertia and bouncing into the walls if it gets shook around, but enough where you can fit a slightly larger one if you needed to. The next thing we need to know is how big is a stack of these. So I'm packaging these in a bundle of 4. So I want to know how big 4 are. Now, you may notice that these have little pads on the bottom. So I'm stacking 4 together and I'm measuring from the top one, the top surface, and also including the pad. And that's about 31.5 millimeters for me. Depending on the thickness of the pad on the bottom of yours, or if yours have pads or not, that's going to change as well. Another factor is some are going to be thicker than others, depending on where you get them. And just in the stack of mine, you can kind of tell they're sort of uniform. There are some that are thicker than others, and they're not perfectly flat either. Some of them have a little bit of an angle to the top. They're thicker on one side than another, and that's okay. Again, natural product and totally fine with that. So what I want to do is take that into account. So we're going to switch to the design software, or in this case, a website that we're going to be using to design it. So this is boxes.py. It's hosted on festi.info, festi.info. They've actually gone through some updates over the years, and I've been using this since before I got a laser because I was designing files that I was interested in trying out on a laser before I even got my first one. But in any event, they have kind of a new GUI here that you can pick from in gallery view. I'm used to the menu view, and I'm just going to revert back to that here. And what we want is under boxes, and they have a lot here. So if you have different things, different trays, different organizers, if you want to make shelves, whatever, dig through these. There's a lot of value here, even not just for products for like making, but like for organizational purposes and to make your shop and your workflow better. So give it a dig through. It's definitely worth your time. So there's a lot of options here. And if you mouse over them, you'll get a little preview of what it might look like when you're done making it. But of course, the results are going to depend entirely on what you input for your measurements and options. What we want is 2-piece here. So we're going to go with 2-piece. And what we're going to do, we're going to remember the dimensions that we said earlier. So for X, it's the inner width. So we're going to go with 102, I think. And I'm going to do 102 here as well. So width and depth we've got. Height is the height of the box. So this is the dimension where we stacked them together and got that measurement. So I'm gonna put in, let's say 40. And that's going to be our height. We're gonna skip the inner height of inner walls because we don't need that because we already took care of it with here. And you'll notice there's an outside option here that's checkmarked. We wanna disable that. And you'll notice there's some text here, unless outside is selected on a lot of these measurements. And this is because you can choose to make the dimensions inside the box based off of the measurement that you need to fit something into it, versus using the dimensions of the outside of the box where you may not care what is going to fit in it. Maybe you only have a certain amount of material, or whatever your use case is, maybe the box has to fit into something rather than something fitting into the box. So whatever your use case is, just keep that in mind. Don't forget to check or uncheck that as needed. In our case for this project, we want to fit something in the box, and therefore my concern is what the inside dimensions are. So uncheck outside. Play is played between the two parts as multiple of wall thickness. I'm going to leave that alone. And thickness, that is important. So we want to measure the thickness of our wood. Now, this is important. If I'm going to use, let's say, this piece of wood right here, it might be listed as 1/4 inch wherever I purchased it. Now, in this case, this is an offcut actually. So domestic seconds, good stuff. But what we're gonna do is zero out our micrometer again. And I'm just going to measure the thickness of this wood. And it is measuring at exactly 8 millimeters. So that is what our thickness is going to be listed at. If you buy 1/4 inch plywood or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 millimeter thick wood, be sure to measure it, because that might be the pre-finished dimension or the classified dimension or categorical dimension, but it might not be the actual dimension of the wood that you're using. So keep that in mind. You want to be 100% on that. So if you're using just random project wood you have laying around to use up materials and make good use of it, you want to keep this in mind, because this is also going to dictate how large your tabs are so that they're not sticking out or too short at the edges. One thing I do like to do, it doesn't apply to every design on here, but labels are great to help you keep track of what goes where. Just don't forget to remove those before you run the project on your laser, or hide them or put them on a layer that's not outputting. Another thing is reference. So you want a reference dimension so that you know everything is to scale. You don't want to go resizing this file after the fact, at least not as a whole, because you're going to be changing the dimension of the tabs, the thickness of the cutouts, and that's going to affect how they fit together. You may end up with finger joints that aren't going all the way through the wood, and therefore you're losing strength, or they're going too far through the wood and now you're increasing finishing time, where you may want to sand that off just because it's sticking out and looks funny, right? So in any event, I use reference. The default is 100, and I like that there because then I know everything is proper to scale. So when I send it to the laser, I'm getting the dimensions I want. You can also do burn correction here. You may have to adjust this from laser to laser. I find that this works perfectly fine for me. I don't need to mess with the default, but you can also handle that in Lightroom. So in any event, we can hit generate and it will generate this in a new tab, or we can hit download and it will just download the SVG. As you can see, boxes.py is a fantastic and powerful tool. I actually use this a lot for when I'm designing boxes. It is super helpful, makes it way faster, and takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. And you don't have to worry about whether or not your math is right most of the time, because if you can measure, you don't have to math it. It will do all the work for you. So from here, we have the file. We just have to drag it into Lightroom. I'm going to go ahead and pull Lightroom up here, and we're going to go ahead and drag this in. You'll notice we have our reference down here. So if we click on this box, it is 100 millimeters in width. So we know everything is properly to scale. And now we can get rid of that. Next thing we want to do is make sure that everything is on a cut layer that should be on a cut layer. Another factor that you'll want to consider is these are two boxes technically, because we selected a two-part box essentially. So one of these is a top and one of these is a bottom. And the way you can tell that is it's kind of clamshell style. So one has to fit over the other. And you can see this has to be either the top or the bottom, because you're going to have one full-size piece on either side. And this is going to be the inner one based off of the location of the little hole cutouts for holding the walls. This is going to be the exterior clamshell that you're going to use as a lid because it's designed to fit over it. If we did it the other way around, You would have to like struggle to get them to fit together if the slate was sitting inside the larger of the two, because the smaller walls would have to fit around the slate and the slate would be kind of floating inside that larger box as you tried to jiggle it together. So in any event, just make sure you know which one's top and bottom. Knowing which one's top and bottom means you can engrave something like a nice note or a message or a from and to tag for a gift or whatever, or you can just keep it plain and finish it out as a nice little wood box. You can also, just kind of going through this, you match up the pieces. In this case, you can do it by size because the walls for the top are going to be larger than the walls for the bottom. Also, the tabs that fit them together. There's 2 tabs on the bottom piece, there's 3 tabs on the top piece, and that's just matching the 2 pieces together and kind of working out how this is going to fit together, right? So we have our little box here. Now the only thing we have left to do is to find a piece of wood that these are going to fit on, shuffle the pieces so that it will fit on that piece of wood and get it cut out. Now, while I'm kind of shuffling things around on screen for you, and it doesn't really make a huge difference how I shuffle these around to you, because ultimately, if you're following along or if you're doing this for yourself, you might be putting something else in the box that might be a different size, or the wood that you're using might just be different dimensions than mine. So ultimately, the dimensions don't really matter to you, and how I arrange these literally doesn't matter to you. However, the fact that I am rearranging them is important, and it is something to consider when you're throwing your design together before you run it on the laser. When you go to cut something out, you want to get the most out of your material. So if you're limited on material, or even if you're not, wastage isn't really a good thing. It means it's cutting into your bottom line, cuts into your available materials, and it's just waste. It's not good. So I could be using the dock tool here, which we did cover in the crash course, but it's not really how my brain functions, and I just like doing this manually. So I did align it using the tool, but now I'm just kind of spacing them out manually, popping them over just to kind of optimize space, and we'll talk more about the wood in just a second, but that's what I'm doing now. All right, so I did some shuffling around here, so I can fit these onto a single one of the boards I have from the domestic seconds box that I received from Ukuch. I was originally going to use this for testing, however, it's actually really nice wood. So I'd really like to use it for a project. So I have this all prepped and ready to go. I just got to throw it on the CO2 laser, and the remaining 4 pieces are going to go on a second piece that I received that are the same thickness, same wood. So let's get it sent over to the laser and get started. Now, of note, we do have this last setup to cut out, which we did prep already. But what you could do, instead of just cutting out 4 flat sides, because essentially what you have is a box where the slate coasters fit into that. The problem with that is the box is very tight to the slate. It's only a couple of millimeters. So some people may not have the ability to get their fingers in there and pull them out. For my case, this is functioning more as a gift box anyway. However, what you could do is create some little finger cutouts. So I'm just gonna make a little oval here with the circle tool, and we're just gonna kind of guesstimate. Now we're gonna be Boolean subtracting this, so it doesn't really matter what the shape looks like that we're cutting out, as long as it seems like an appropriate cutout size. That looks about right to me. So the way you use the Boolean subtract tool, it's like a cookie cutter. You highlight the shape you want to basically use as your main piece, and then you use Control, and you select the item that you want to stamp out or remove the area from. and you hit Boolean subtract there on the side, and you now have a cutout. Now, I'm gonna make sure that these are aligned before I do that. And then I'm gonna redo that, cut it out. And since this piece would be the same as this piece, it is the same piece, there's two of each, I would simply delete that one, duplicate this one, and I now have my two little spots where I can use my fingers to pinch out a slate out of the box. I'm not doing it for this round. However, this design is something I plan to do for a couple of different boxes. And sometimes you just have to cut out a project and try it out for yourself and feel out that you want to make a design change or make it easier to use. And this is something that I've learned cutting out other boxes for other things. And this is something I will be implementing on some of these. But in any event, I hope that helps. I'm gonna go ahead and cut out some walls so I can finish putting together the base of my box, and then we'll proceed with the project. All right, so we have our initial box here. It's friction fit together. So what we're gonna do is I have the other four pieces to go along with the base. And with the box portions that you need to fit into this, rather than just at the edge like this design. Because these need to be on the interior of the shape where you don't have edge access, I suggest putting together this portion of it first, because what you need to do is fit these into the box all at the same time. So there's a little bit of an order of operations for this. So you're gonna wanna fit the edges together first, and then puzzle piece it together like so. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. You want to take your time with it as you pinch it together so you don't accidentally shear off any of the little tabs that are working as fitment joints. Now we are pretty much together here. So this is what we look like now. So what we can do is I can go ahead and put the slate into here, and we have a functioning box. And as you can see, we do have some space here at the top, but that's fine with me. I'd rather have too much space in the box than too little. So overestimating just a bit is fine. And as you can see, our box goes together perfectly here. I'm not really going to be covering the gluing process because it's just gluing two things together essentially. But when you go to glue the walls together, I really like Gorilla Glue if you don't have a wood glue, or Titebond 3 or Titebond 2. There's a lot of options, and as long as you're using a quality glue, you shouldn't really have too many problems. Generally speaking, if you put too much on, you can usually wipe it off with like a wet paper towel. You don't want it soaking wet, just damp, and it'll wipe right off. It works great. You just need the littlest bit in between the two surfaces of wood for it to stick together and hold. In the case of these, this is friction fit and it's holding together by itself. Now, I wouldn't trust that when giving it to somebody, but the glue will actually operate almost like a lube to help fit it together even easier. And once it's together, it's gonna stay together. A good quality wood glue will have really good holding capability, and you don't need a ton of it. Now, the beautiful part about this is domestic seconds from Ukuch hardwoods. So what I was able to do is I was able to salvage an otherwise piece of recycled wood that I would normally use for testing or a little side project or something like that. And there was enough wood there for us to get a nice small project like this out of that. So it's super cost effective. The downside to that type of thing is that you don't know what type of thickness of wood you're getting, and because of that inconsistency, it may be hard to pre-plan for projects. A more consistent way of doing that is getting like a nice hardwood faced plywood, like a good quality plywood to do the project with. Then you're getting a consistent thickness. You can plan your dimensions and use the same project file for a lot of runs of these. Whereas this is what I have on hand and I don't want to go get more wood, this is perfect for me. Also, this is really beautiful hardwood, nice solid wood. So I like how this turned out. If you're interested, knock it out. It is 2 projects in one, and you now have leveled up your product to a more complete item, something that gives it a little bit more value, and in my case is going to be a great little Christmas gift. So I hope you've all enjoyed. Have a fantastic holiday season. I wish you all the best from the Laser Everything team. And if you like what we do, consider joining the Laser Master Academy. It is the members there that make everything we do possible and allow us to spend all of our time helping you all and creating content to help everyone. We appreciate you all. Check out the links below for all of the tools and the utilities that I used, the website, boxes.py, and yeah, have a fantastic day. Take care.